Hello, welcome to Old Virginia Homes. I have been so looking forward to seeing this house today, which has just recently reopened to the public after a multi-year $40 million revitalization project. George Washington's Mount Vernon had some major issues going on, and the hordes of visitors trudging through the house daily was taking its toll. Thousands of tourists each day, more than 1 million a year, have contributed to the wear and tear of the building's fabric. But beyond that, the historic home had some fundamental problems that were threatening the integrity of its infrastructure, as well as its ornamentation and interior details. The construction punch list was massive, and each task had to be exhaustively researched and meticulously carried out, with historic accuracy always considered, but modern technology also employed. Termite damage had detached this iconic building from its very foundation. Better drainage around the cellar was imperative to the health of the house. A new HVAC system was needed for much improved environmental control. Herculean efforts and a substantial budget have addressed a multitude of issues, so that our founding fathers' house can continue to welcome us as guests for the 250th anniversary of our nation and beyond. Join me as we visit Mount Vernon, an old Virginia home in Fairfax County. Let's go. Perched above the Potomac River, Mount Vernon is a carefully composed vision, an American statement of status that has become an architectural symbol of our almost King George, President George Washington, and the house is crowned by a cupola visible from afar and offering a far-flung vista. Of course, Washington rejected the proposal of becoming a reigning monarch, cementing his legacy as a patriot serving our country. This grand home began as a 1.5-story house. Both the man and the house grew in stature, shaped and refined by ambition and sophistication. Built in 1734 by George Washington's father, Augustine Washington, the house at Little Hunting Creek Plantation was 4 rooms with a central passage and a garret, space upstairs. Washington's older half-brother Lawrence renamed the estate Mount Vernon when he inherited the estate upon the death of their father. Eventually, George inherited Mount Vernon and spent 45 years there. Many of those years involved construction as the house grew and grew. So this is what I focused on when I arrived to Mount Vernon and realized that the exciting revitalization project is still happening. I just tried to imagine that this was similar to Martha Washington's view of her home for long stretches of time. Washington was working elsewhere during the majority of the renovation projects, leaving oversight to others, including a family friend, a carpenter, an overseer, and all his enslaved laborers. In 1754, the estate was 3,000 acres, and the house was about 3,500 square feet. By the time of Washington's death, the estate had grown to 7,600 acres, and the house was almost 11,000 square feet. That's 10 times the size of the average house in colonial Virginia. At first glance, the house looks like it's faced with cut stone, but this is actually yellow pine siding. Using a technique called rustication, the wood is shaped to give the appearance of cut stone blocks. It's then painted with oil paint, and before the paint can dry, sand is thrown onto it to create a stone-like texture. The weather vane was commissioned by Washington himself specifying that the design should have a bird with an olive branch in its mouth, that it will traverse with the wind and therefore may receive the real shape of a bird. Entering the house, the central passage would have been where guests were not only greeted, but often entertained. During hot weather, both exterior doors were opened to take advantage of cross-ventilation breezes and so that guests could enjoy the views. The Potomac River and its opposite Maryland shoreline to the east, and the beautifully manicured turf of the bowling green to the west, where guests could play lawn games. At the heart of Mount Vernon is a grand two-story room named the New Room by Washington upon its completion in the 1770s. Flooded with light from the towering windows, this was probably Washington's most ambitious architectural statement. The green walls and decorative plasterwork on the ceiling show refinement. This, along with the scale of the room, would have been influenced by the grand salons of 18th century English manor homes. Washington hung 21 works of art in this room. Although most of these have been temporarily removed, when the renovation is complete, you should be able to view these, including 6 large landscape paintings that are the original canvases that Washington acquired. The room was also occasionally used for dining, with high-ranking guests or large parties that couldn't comfortably fit in the smaller dining room. The dining room, with its vivid verdigris hue, makes the green walls of the new room seem subtle in comparison, and a glaze overcoat intensifies this bold choice. This wasn't the original color when the room was built in 1734. It was updated in 1785 and has remained this way since, a daring design move that has become a hallmark of Mount Vernon. In 1775, Washington hired an expert plasterer who installed the elaborately decorated plasterwork on the ceiling and above the mantel. The front parlor was originally the room that Washington referred to as the best place in my house, until the new room earned that title. Nonetheless, the architectural elements in this room are stunning. The Palladian door frames, paneled walls, decorative plasterwork on the ceiling. And this room is delightfully personalized with the family coat of arms carved above the mantel. The room referred to as the little parlor is actually a pretty normal-sized room measuring at about 13 feet by 17 feet. But in comparison to the other rooms at Mount Vernon, it does feel small. This room had initially been a bedchamber, but was later converted to a parlor and music room after George and Martha Washington returned home from the presidency. George Washington's study was his quiet retreat from a steady stream of visitors. Here he managed the estate, wrote correspondence, reviewed reports, and even bathed and dressed. No one was permitted to enter without invitation. Martha's sanctuary was upstairs in the Washington's spacious bedchamber. Here she wrote her correspondence, read her Bible, planned her schedule. This is also the room in which George Washington died on December 14, 1799, of a severe throat infection. This room was subsequently closed up by Martha, who spent much of the remaining few years of her life in a bedchamber on the 3rd floor. The 2nd floor has 6 bedrooms. The 1st floor has 1, and the 3rd floor includes garret chambers, lumber rooms, and a china closet used for storage. The 3rd floor also provides access to the cupola. Of course, a house this size in this time period utilized an enslaved staff of butlers, maids, seamstresses, waiters, and cooks who worked from morning to night in an endless cycle of duties. Beyond the household workforce, there were also enslaved skilled tradesmen and women and enslaved field workers. At the time of George Washington's death, the estate listed an enslaved population of 317 people. Outbuildings where these people worked include a kitchen, smokehouse, storehouse, shoemaker's shop, blacksmith shop, stable, men's and women's slave quarters, and more. Much research has been done around this population and their significant contribution. You can learn about their lives and how they put Washington's ideas into practice. Specific names and personal stories through a day in the life of interpretations are offered in abundance. You can also learn about specific agrarian practices of the day. And there's great information about the Mount Vernon Ladies Association, which was founded in 1853 and led by Anne Pamela Cunningham. Mount Vernon had fallen into a dangerous decline when a pioneering group of women purchased and preserved Washington's Mount Vernon in one of the earliest and most important acts of historic preservation. Although the timing of my visit was premature as far as the completion of the revitalization project, my timing couldn't have been more perfect in terms of baby farm animal season. I was completely captivated by these little lambs. I spent an inordinate amount of time watching them and filming them, and altogether consumed by their plaintive bleating. I do hope when you visit or revisit Mount Vernon, the droves of construction workers and their construction equipment and obstructive fencing will be gone, and you will have a full, unencumbered view of the estate, including the restoration of the cellar, which is being renovated and restored to look like it did during the era that it housed the enslaved Lee family. There is so much to see and do here. Plan to spend an entire day. Thank you for visiting Mount Vernon with me, an old Virginia home.